over the course of the past 6 months, give or take. I've been on a bit of a weight loss journey, and this is just a little bit of some data and some results based on what I've currently went through. A few things to remember. One, this is simply a case study, and it's a very poorly controlled case study. It's more of an anecdotal story that I'm using to just have some fun and try to support or refute what some of the research says. This is a case study on weight loss and the attenuation of metabolic adaptation, right? So what is metabolic adaptation? Well, we'll get into that next.
All right, so let's jump in. Metabolic adaptation. Sometimes you could use the term adaptive thermogenesis, whatever you want to call it, right? What is this? A basic definition is a reduction in resting metabolic rate following a significant sustained weight loss period, right? A reduction in resting metabolic rate following a sustained weight loss period. Well, what's resting metabolic rate, right? Well, resting metabolic rate is the total calories it takes to maintain your current existence if you were to do nothing all day. Just sit still, right? How many calories would it take to maintain, not gain weight, not lose weight? And that's what resting metabolic rate is. So uh, this adaptive thermogenesis basically is a theory that looks at or that states where as we lose weight, right, for long periods of time, our resting metabolic rate is actually going to decrease. And the whole problem with this, or the whole issue, is that some people think, oh, my metabolism has just slowed down. I've lost 20 pounds, my metabolism has slowed down, or whatever it is. They can't seem to lose any more weight because they think their metabolism has slowed down tremendously. And I obviously have my opinion on this, but there's research on both sides supporting both sides of this. Okay, so the only study I wanted to highlight because it really speaks to what I currently have done and noticed, observed in my own results is a study by Martins et al. I am going to link some studies in my profile, or I'll put up some citations if you guys want to actually read some of these studies. But this study by Martins et al. Is a little bit more pertinent. So what did Martins do? They had 71 participants, 71 obese participants that went through a 8-week weight loss period. I don't know why it says weird, but weight loss period. The average weight loss over the course of 8 weeks was 13.9 kilograms. That's a lot of weight, right? That's 30 pounds over the course of 8 weeks. That's a significant loss. I remember it was 13% of their weight on average was lost. So the most significant things here are the bottom two bullet points where resting metabolic rate dropped by 92 calories when they measured it immediately after the weight loss period, right? It was 8 weeks, so at week 1, they measured resting metabolic rate, right? It was approximately like 1900 calories was their resting metabolic rate. After they finished dieting, the resting metabolic rate decreased by 92 calories. So first thing, right, you don't see this crazy reduction in resting metabolic rate. Some people, I feel like they think that if they go on a weight loss period, their resting metabolic rate is going to drop by 600 calories, 700 calories, 800 calories, where they think that like they have to eat, 900 calories to lose weight. That's going to be extremely, extremely rare. And extremely rare. When we say there's a reduction in resting metabolic rate, it looks more like this: 100, 150, 200 calories, depending on how severe the diet is. Maybe a little bit more when you get into these really sustained periods where you get down to like 7% body fat, 6% body fat, so on and so forth. But the most important thing about this study is they measured resting metabolic rate exactly 4 weeks later, right? So they went on a diet, they measured it week 1, they measured it week 8, right? They measured it another 4 weeks later, and the resting metabolic rate seemed to bounce back up. There was still a reduction, but it was only 38 calories, right? So that whole resting metabolic rate, adaptive thermogenesis, whatever you want to call it, right, seems to be attenuated as soon as you go back on a maintenance for calories, right? So they went on maintenance for calories, and that's why their resting metabolic rate kind of bounced back up. So the main takeaway is it seems to be not this long-term adaptive thing. It's really kind of just acutely, we'll say metabolism is acutely downregulated following a reduction period. But if you go back on maintenance, it seems to go back to baseline. All right, so let's look at some of my information for weight loss. Right. So now that we have that background, here's where I'm starting with, right? I weighed approximately 188 to 191 in early February, and 4 months later, I got up to 200 pounds. It was a goal I was shooting for, and it was exactly on May 3rd. I was 200 pounds on the dot. From about, I would say, late April through July, I took multiple skin fold caliper readings of body fat, and I think it was 3 or 4, and I was always between 20 and 23% body fat on skin fold calipers, which is probably the highest I've ever been in any recent time in the past 10 years, give or take. Nice little thing to note is that I was clinically obese. So at 5 feet 8 inches tall, 200 pounds, my BMI is 30.4, which puts me in the clinically obese category. I started my weight cut on August 6th. So from May to August, I kind of just ate whatever I wanted. I didn't really have any goals in mind, and I started on August 6th at 196 pounds. So my weight cut guidelines. Early on, I was targeting approximately 3,000 calories to lose weight. This should have been a deficit for me based on my activity level and based on my current weight, and that's what I was shooting for. My main target, though, was making sure I took in at least 180 grams of protein, and that's at least. I would say on average, I was probably getting more closer to 200, right? During the weight loss period, and I'm still in that period, I always had what I would call a quote-unquote cheat day, and that was on Saturday. I don't want to spend too long speaking to the psychology of cheat days. However, it's important to understand that I noticed that it was initially a cheat meal, I should say. It was initially a cheat meal, and initially my cheat meal became a cheat day. And then initially after that, my cheat day slowly became a cheat weekend, where on Saturday and Sunday I was eating more and more calories, especially in August and September. And I kind of had to rein that in. So there's this whole psychology behind that, which I'll probably address at some other time. But again, my calories started to go up for the week because of my cheat weekends, right? So in about October, I had to bring down my daily calories to about 2,600 to really kind of expedite the whole weight loss. So now, the numbers that we actually care about, right? On October 1st, I was able to measure my resting metabolic rate, and it averaged down here. My resting metabolic rate looked to be about 1,430 calories, give or take. All right. At that time, I weighed about 187, maybe 188. I don't have it written down anywhere, so I'm not quite sure. All right. So I had already finished losing, 9 pounds. I had been dieting for approximately, 3 months, right? August, September. No, 2 months. Excuse me. August, September. Now, here I am in December. Right, so this is about 3 days ago. I remeasured my resting metabolic rate, right? And again, all of these numbers are what you would average, and in the bottom, right, is what's bolded. My resting metabolic rate in December actually increased 400 calories. I don't know what that means. We'll talk about that in a second. But my resting metabolic rate actually increased to 1,800. So how is that possible? What does that mean? The biggest thing, my biggest takeaway is, all right, it's probably some faulty readings when I measured it in October. I don't think it was necessarily 1,400. There's probably some faulty readings. I did a BOD-POD assessment, which does a predicted, it doesn't actually assess it. It predicts my resting metabolic rate, and I did that in September, and it had me around 1,800, right? What else, right, would have caused my resting metabolic rate to increase, or at the very least we can say probably maintain? Well, one, I've lost my weight extremely slowly. extremely slowly. I'm losing less than a pound a week, probably more like 0.65 to 0.7 pounds per week, right? Refeed periods. So this is in a paper by Campbell et al., where they talk about ways you can attenuate your metabolism, this adaptive thermogenesis, and he talked about what's called nonlinear dieting. And there's a few things you can use to help, or there's a few things that really would be characterized as nonlinear dieting. So linear dieting would essentially be, okay, if I'm trying to lose weight, right, I'm going to eat a deficit, right? Let's say it's 1,500 calories, and I'm going to eat that every single day, right? For 3 months, I'm going to eat 1,500 calories. That's a linear diet, right? So nonlinear dieting, there's a few different things you can do. One would be called refeed periods, which are essentially cheat days or cheat meals. So, 1, 2, 3 days a week, you're going to increase your calories. Usually this is increased through carbohydrates, right? And that's what I did on my cheat days. So I can guarantee on my cheat days, I was probably having closer to 3,500, maybe even 4,000 calories. Right, there's a lot of research out there which really supports the use of this. This has been used in like gym bro circles for 25, 30, 50 years. We've been talking about carb cycling for at least 20 years. In essence, this is really looked at as like carb cycling. Intermittent fasting is another form of nonlinear dieting where you would eat a certain amount of calories on one day, and then on the next day don't eat at all, right? And this is actually going to help, right, maintain your resting metabolic rate. What else is another form? So another form of nonlinear dieting is what we call a diet break, right? And I have most recently finished taking a diet break during the Thanksgiving break, where for approximately 2 weeks I was eating closer to 3,200, 3,300 calories on average. I put on approximately 2.5, 3 pounds instead of actually losing, and now I'm going to go into my second phase. I think the most important takeaway, right? The most important takeaway is now comparing what I've done to the Martine study, right? Where the Martine study, they went on a weight loss period and then they went on maintenance for 4 weeks, and the resting metabolic rate was again, it was bumped back up almost to the normal values. Same thing with mine, where when I measured my resting metabolic rate, right, it was about 2 or 3 days ago, it was after a diet break. So after 2 weeks of a diet break where I ingested more calories, you could say my resting metabolic rate actually increased to when I measured it during my diet, right? So it's basically a case study. I am a small case study that's poorly, terribly controlled, seemingly supporting, right, what Martins et al. Discussed, and that's the fact that, well, is metabolic adaptation or metabolic adaptive thermogenesis a real thing? It doesn't seem to be as real as we think it is, right? It definitely doesn't crash that much, and if you go back on maintenance or a surplus, maybe it goes back to baseline much quicker than we think, right? So that's my whole takeaway from this. I've got about another 2.5 months of weight loss where I'm going to try to kind of get my body fat down to below 10%. I'm currently sitting at about 16%. We'll see kind of what that looks like. In addition, I'll take resting metabolic rate again, and we'll see kind of where it is 2 months from now.